So welcome everyone. How are you doing? Today's Monday. Wow. I'm like, feels like Wednesday. I'm already done with the week. So how are you all doing today? You sound very inspired. We're being recorded right now, so the home viewing audience can watch at a later time, or if there's things that you missed, you could always watch this at a later time. So welcome to the InDesign resume. My name is Rick Miller. I teach the InDesign, Premiere Pro, and Photoshop classes here. Before I started teaching at USC, I used to work at Adobe. My name's on the credit screen for Premiere Pro and Photoshop. So feel free to take the Premiere Pro and Photoshop class. I'm really good at all the applications. So what is InDesign? Actually, before we start, what is InDesign? How many of you have never used InDesign before? Okay, so the majority. How many of you are really new to InDesign? Okay, some of you are maybe like intermediate with InDesign, advanced. Okay, so the majority of you are absolutely brand new to InDesign. A couple of you are new to it. So I'll explain what InDesign is. So InDesign is the industry-leading page design and layout tool set that lets you work across desktop and mobile devices to create, pre-flight, and publish everything from printed books and brochures to digital magazines, ebooks, and interactive online documents. So why would you use InDesign to create your resume instead of Word? So InDesign is a page layout program that specializes in allowing you to control your layout with precision. Word is a word processing tool with some layout tools. You don't have the control in Word that you do in InDesign. So since the majority of you are new to, I keep walking away from the microphone like I'm going to be teaching my class, so I need to stay next to the microphone, or else I'll be drifting off and people are like, what the heck? So a little bit about a background about InDesign. InDesign was created to be exclusively a page layout program for print, and that's how it started. And then what happened is the industry changed. People were then expected to be able to take their print content and be able to repurpose it for mobile devices, such as your smartphone, your tablet-based device, or for the web. And so where people used to work in siloed environments, you'd have print, you'd have the print group working here, you'd have a web design group in here, you would have coders, you would have video, and you would have photographers. Everyone worked in their siloed environment. Now you're expected, no matter what your workflow is, to be able to repurpose that content for print, web, and mobile-based devices. So then InDesign allows you to be able to go to wherever it is that you want to. And so that's what's great about it. You create it once and you push it out to wherever you want. So today we're going to be talking about resume resources. Then we'll look at the user interface in InDesign, since the majority of you have never used InDesign before. Then we'll learn how to create a simple but creative resume. So let's go ahead and look at some resume resources. Let me close PowerPoint. Now I'm actually just going to use Adobe Bridge to go here. In there's the students file. You have this resources folder, and inside that resources folder you have a whole bunch of different options. You have resume tips, links that you have, what a perfect resume looks like, what a recruiter looks at during the 6 seconds they spend on your resume, bunch there. More resume tips in there. For those of you who are part of Annenberg, you have free access to the lynda.com training site. Here is a link for designing resume there. Here is the Adobe how to create a professional resume and snazz up your resume. So there's a video here, and then there are the files that you can download. And what we're going to be doing today is based a little bit about creating a professional resume from the Adobe site. But then there is, the perfect resume for a recent college graduate. And it talks about, 8 key things going through this resume, why this was, a good one. So additionally, inside there's, if we click on this one, little bit about working with InDesign. So if you have a little questions about how do I work with links or linking Word document files for automatic updating in InDesign, those links are there. We're going to be going through all of this in today's class, so if you forget, all those links are there for you. Then in that students folder, you should have the files one, and in there is one that Adobe created. It's called this resume.indd. That this is the rough one before it starts getting formatted. And then there's the links folder with a photo and a text. So let's go ahead and we will launch InDesign right now. Does everyone have InDesign open right now? Okay, great. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a brand new document. We can either do it here from the create new. I can open one that's already been created, or we can go to the InDesign menu and go to the file and choose new. So I'll just go to the file menu, choose new, and then choose document. We'll go ahead and do that. So incidentally, it doesn't matter if you're on Windows or Mac. Like my machine to the right over here that I usually use is a Windows HP. The one that I'm demoing on today or working with today is a Mac machine. It's the same thing. Doesn't matter. It's like Ford or Chevy, Nikon or Canon. So I go ahead and click document. Does everyone have the new document dialog box? Okay. And if you don't, or if I go too fast, please feel free to shout out, hey, I don't know where you are. New document dialog box pops open. Now, it exclusively used to be a print application. Now, as I indicated earlier, you can work with print, web, or mobile-based device. Since we're going to be creating a resume, we'll go ahead and select our print presets. Now, just because we're creating it for print doesn't mean we can't also save this out as a PDF for the web or to be able to be viewed on mobile devices. Additionally, we can also create interactivity there. We can embed video, we can embed audio in there, we can embed slideshows in there for mobile devices or the web. But for right now, we're just going to create a very basic print one. And so you have a whole bunch, you have different templates here. You might see all of these, you might not see all of them. But do you see the one that says letter? Do y'all see that? Okay, so we'll select the letter, and then where it says, let's give this document a name, so we'll call this resume. Now, if you don't see these in inches, you might see it as points or picas. Like, if you see something like picas, you're like, whoa, what the heck is this? Don't worry, just click here to this pop-up menu and go ahead and select inches. And so now you can see it at 8.5 by 11 inches. Then we want to say, do we want to do portrait orientation or landscape? Right now, we're going to do portrait orientation, and we'll just select one page. Facing pages, we could just uncheck this. This, isn't going to be, relevant for what we're doing right now. This is if we're going to be doing like a magazine or layout where we want it facing pages where you open it and it goes to the next page. But we're just going to do a single page right now. Then we'll go ahead and we will create this document. Great. So now we are in the InDesign work environment. What I want to do is I want to make sure that we are all on the same page and everything looks the same. So since I'm using someone else's computer, I want to make sure that everything is the same as the default that you should have. So let's just be on the safe side. Let's all go to the window menu. Let's go to workspace, and let's make sure that essentials is selected. So we have the essentials workspace, and then we're going to go down to reset essentials. So what are these workspaces? These workspaces are nothing more than presets that the Adobe engineering team created to be able to make it as optimal for you as possible to work with panels, work with menus in a particular environment. So for example, if I was working with an interactive PDF, I would click on that, and then it would update my menu to give me things such as buttons and forms, hyperlinks, bookmarks, media preview. If I wanted to go to window workspace and I was going to work with type, I would click on typography, and then it goes ahead and gives me glyphs, text rack, stroke, paragraph styles, character styles. But for right now, we're going to use the default, which is Window, Workspace. We select Essentials, and then, just to be on the safe side, Window, Workspace, we are going to reset Essentials. We click Reset Essentials, and let's see if it changes anything here. As soon as I click Reset Essentials, yeah, it went ahead and it cleaned everything up nice and neat. Good. Everyone here? Awesome. So what we have right here is, this is our document. We have our document right here, and I want to go ahead, we can scroll down if we want to. Over here to the left, this is our tool panel, and I can actually grab it right here, and I can pull this out so you can see it a little bit better in the back. So this is our tool panel. This has all the tools that we're going to need when we're working with our documents. We can move content, we could add type, we could add frames that we can put content into, whether it's photos or text. We can go ahead and add shapes if we want to. We can choose our stroke color, our fill color, and our stroke color. But I'm going to go ahead and move this off to the side. Additionally, anytime you see a tool and it has the sideways delta, the sideways triangle, if you press down on it, it will show you that there are hidden tools underneath. In this case, this would be type on a path tool. If I went ahead here and selected the rectangle tool, I press down and I can see that I also have the ellipse tool and the polygon tool. So a bunch of different hidden ones. And why are these tools hidden? These tools are hidden because they are important, but they're not as important as these key ones right here. And if every single tool had to be displayed on the toolbox at once, it would take up valuable screen real estate. So we have this. So let's go ahead and we're going to start creating content, and then I'm going to be explaining all of this right now. So the first thing that we do is we have our new page, and what we want to start doing is I'm going to open up the default one that they have. If we go to the resume, so you can just watch this. This is like the starter where Adobe started from, and then they went ahead and added other stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to create this sidebar right here, but we're going to change the color. We're going to put a name there. We're going to format it. We're going to put a photo inside there. We'll put this little, nice little line right there. We'll have this little page turned up icon, and we'll just start, making this look a lot nicer than what it is. So the first thing here is I can see on this one I have this rulers here. So let's go to our blank page. Do you all see the rulers right here at the top? If you do not see those rulers right there, what you would do is, to view those rulers, go to the View menu and select Show Rulers. As soon as we do that, we see those rulers. Now, depending, like right here, it's set to inches. However you created your document, if you created your document using pixels, then this would show up as pixels. But if you want to change this, like this unit of measurement, you could right click on there, and then you can change it to whatever you want to. So let's say I wanted to change it to pixels. I do that, and this horizontal ruler changes to pixels. However, the units of measurement on the left stay the same until I actually change them. So I'm going to go back here and set to inches. Does everyone have inches set right now? Okay, so what we want to do, I'm looking here at this one, and around 3 inches in, they have this frame over here. It has a little bit of space on the bottom, and it has this page turned up icon. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I want to do is I want to create a guideline. So in order to get a guideline, so we know exactly where we want to draw this, let's go over here to the left hand side to our vertical ruler. We press down, and then we drag out this guide. And so it's telling us it's going to, as soon as I get it to 3 inches, it says okay, 3 inches, and then I can let go. And so now I have a guide that's going to help me precisely place this rectangle that I'm going to do on the side. Does that make sense? Okay. And so then I could put a guide down here if I wanted some precision, like how far down do I want it. Like if I look here, it shows me that, I can measure out what that is. But you know what? We're just going to eyeball it right now. So let's go ahead here, and we want to go to the, we want to go down to our rectangle, our rectangle tool right there. So the rectangle tool is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tools beneath the type tool. So we select the rectangle tool, and as soon as we do that, we have that. We have our fill color right there. Well, actually, let's just drag it out right now. Let's drag this out, and as soon as I start to drag it out, see how it snaps against that? It snaps, and so I'm dragging, and you're going to see a problem in a second. So let's just eyeball it, and it's like, and see how it's kind of cool. It tells me that the width is 3 inches, but then I can see the height. So this is 8.5 by 11. So if I'm going down here, I'm like, okay, maybe I want it, 8.5 by, and I'm like, okay, maybe like 10 3/4, whatever, that would be good. I just let go, and so now I have this. But the problem though is that I didn't set a fill color, nor did I set a stroke before I drag that out. So it's just a blank one. Well, it's already selected. It's still selected. So you see right here where it says fill, we can click here to fill, and we can, if we want to, select like black, cyan, magenta, yellow, green, blue, red, green, blue, or if we don't, say okay, we don't like those and stuff, we can double click. So we either click here and it pops this open, or we can double click on that swatch and it pops open the RGB color picker, so we can choose a color there. For now, let's just go ahead and click that pop-up, and we're going to instead choose cyan. So let's select cyan. As soon as we, does everyone have that? Yes.
Mine is different. Mine automatically goes to color picker.
Okay, so when, okay, did you click on this pop-up to the right, the little arrow?
Oh, no, sorry.
Yeah. So it does, like I said, it doesn't matter which one you want. You could click this and choose a color here, or if you double click on the swatch, you can choose the color picker here, and then you move it to like, a range that you like. And then I actually like the color picker in Photoshop better, because in this way you can have the entire, the color wheel right there. You'd have red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. You can just choose that slider here. You just kind of get in that range, and then I'm like, okay, there's red. Then you drag this down to red, and then you kind of choose how you want it. So, but I'm just going to cancel that. So does everyone have a color that they want? Okay, great. So we have that there. Now, what I want to do, because we're going to be placing content underneath this side panel right there, I don't want to accidentally place content or group it inside that frame, and I don't want to accidentally move it. So I want to lock this. So how we lock this, you see right over here our layers panel. If we click on our, and incidentally, these are panels right here. All of our panels can also be found under the window menu. So if you wanted to apply effects to it, I would click on the effects one. If I wanted to, if I wanted to work with a stroke, I could do that. But or I could choose pages here. But I'm going to go layers right here, and then right now it says layer 1. But to the left of layer 1 is that little disclosure triangle. If we click on that, I can see that I have a rectangle. So rectangle means nothing to me, especially if I have a bunch of different rectangles. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, on the name of that, double click on there, so it'll highlight it, and then this way we can go ahead and give it a name. So what should we call this side panel? What do you want to call it? Side panel. Okay, good. We'll call this side panel. Something that, this is, like, you call it whatever you want to, just give it something that's descriptive that makes sense for you. So if you have to go back and you have a bunch of layers, you don't want to have to figure out what it is. Oh, it helps if I spell it. I put a P instead of or put an O instead. Okay, so we call this side panel. So the next thing that I want to do after I have that is I'm going to go right to the left of the text. So right here it says toggle page items, lock. If we click on here, boop, see how it applied that little lock to it? So now I can't move that at all. So that's good. So if I went ahead here and I got my selection tool and I try moving it, I can't move it at all. So I like that. That's good. But now I unlocked it. Let me beep. So you can lock it. Now, in addition to that, you see the visibility, that little eyeball? We can turn that off and on to turn that visibility. Okay, so now we have this lock. The next thing that we want to do is we want to put a name there, and then we want to go ahead and start placing photos there. So we'll go ahead here, and we'll get our type tool. We'll select our type tool. Now, here's the thing. Watch what I'm going to do before we do this. When I go over here and I look at this, there's a lot of, there's a header, there's, the subheaders. They each have their own, like, look over here, like for the typeface. If I go ahead here, it tells me that that was Helvetica Bold. If I go to the subheaders, this was PT Sans. And if I go to the body, it tells me it's PT Sans Regular. So each one of these has its own format. If I go ahead here, this is Helvetica Bold. All the headers are Helvetica Bold. All of the body is going to be PT Sans. So what does this mean? This means that we can, each time we're creating it, have to, type in the type and then add that format. Or we could do something easier where we create a style. And then we just put whatever text we want, don't even worry about it, and then we just say, oh, we define this as a header. All headers have this style applied to it. All body copy have this style applied to it. All subheaders have this style applied to it. It makes it really easy. So for now, we'll just go ahead and we will select this type tool. We will drag out. And I'm going to go ahead and choose, I'm going to see if Helvetica is on here. Helvetica, okay, good. So I'll do Helvetica Bold. You might not have it. If you don't have Helvetica Bold, try something like, try a bold. It doesn't matter which one you choose. So I'll do that. And then I can see the cursor right there. It's flashing. So this is really small. I want this a bit larger. So I'll maybe try 24. So 24 looks good. And so we will give this a name. So go ahead and type your name. I'm going to go ahead and for this one, they have all capitals, but Jenny Pixel. So I will put Jane Pixel. Jane Pixel. And so if I want this a bit larger, well, actually, you know what? Yeah. If I can go ahead and highlight this, and I say, okay, maybe 24 points was not it. Let's try 30. 30 seems good. And then if I want to, I can select here to my selection tool. The selection tool is V. So if we click on that, I can drag this, and this is really cool. Watch this. When we move this, notice how as soon as we get it to the center of that, it will go ahead and snap. So that's pretty cool. However, I'm going to get my zoom tool really quickly. Let's get our zoom tool and drag a zoom selection in. And we can see that when we created that text frame, like I'm trying to center this text right here to the vertical center of that panel. And I thought that it was lined up. However, it's lining up to that text frame. So what issue do we have here with this text frame? There's too much space on that right hand side. So when we're trying to align it with this text frame, this one is flush left, but there's space there. So we're not getting an exact, centering of it. So what I like to do, let's get our selection tool. We go above that text, make sure that that text frame is selected, right click on it, and you see this option called fitting. We go to fitting, and we're going to fit that text frame to the content. And watch what happens as soon as we do that. Look here right now. So before, see there's that space, but if I right click, I go to fitting and I go fit frame to content. Boop. So now it snaps. So now I don't have any extra space down there, and I don't have any extra space there. So now when we go ahead and we grab this with our selection tool, when we drag this around, boop, wherever it snaps is going to be perfectly centered to that frame. Does that make sense? So let me do that again. I let go. I'm like, boom, perfect. So what do you now that I have that, what do you think I want to actually before I lock it? I have it just the way that I like there. That's good. So what do you think we want to do now that we go and we have it in place? Yes.
Mine's not fitting to the frame.
Okay. Let me come ahead and check it out really quickly. So here is, so if you have something, for those of you who are viewing this at home, if you have, like this goes over, it either there's too much, like you see this little red icon there that indicates that you have overset text, and then you actually have to grab the frame and drag that down. And so for yours, let me just double check on yours. See if it has that. Okay, yeah. Oh, so yours, can I see that? Okay. So if you have it on a second line and you click on it, and I right click and I go to fitting and I go fit frame to content, mine will snap here, but then yours wasn't. So sometimes what you have to do in that case, in this one, is just drag it a bit closer, and then when it gets there it'll kind of show you. But if I have a little bit of space, then try it again, right click, choose fitting, and then fit frame to content. And so sometimes it's not going to snap all the way, then you just, like I said, you just bring it till it snaps and then you're good. That makes sense? Okay, so I'm going to bring this back, so I'll get my type tool, I'll click right, and like I said, you could have it, you know, just like here, and so I can keep it there, or I can click, I can go back or click back here, and then beep, beep, if I want to. But I have to change my frame because I changed the frame of that really quickly. So it's whatever you want to do. So I'll right click, choose fitting, fit frame to content, boom, now it snaps. I get my selection tool and I just snap it till it's centered, and then I let go. And I think I accidentally moved off of it when I did that. Okay, great. So if I don't want to accidentally move it, what do you think I'm going to do? Lock it, exactly. For those of you who are listening at home, they did say lock it, but they're very quiet. So I'll go ahead. I don't want to break the microphone. So I'll go ahead here, and I'm going to go to the layers menu. I'll go to layer 1. I'll click on it. It says Jane Pixel. Then we go right here, and we lock it. Good. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to put right here, we want to put a frame for photos. So I went ahead and put added a photo in there already, which is a picture of a guy, not of Jane. So maybe we put this to Jim Pixel, but whatever, doesn't matter. So we want to put a frame there. So in case if you have your own photo, you could use that. If you have a photo on your desktop, feel free to use that. How we're going to add a photo, there are a couple different ways to do that. I could go ahead and go to the file. So let's go to the file menu. Let's go to place. We'll go file, place. We'll navigate to wherever we have our files. In my case, it's on the desktop, under Students, under Files, and there's a folder called Links. And then within Links, you have a photo and a text. So I'm going to select this one called Cody Headshot. So I said, okay, there's Cody Headshot, and it tells us that what resolution this is. If we go ahead and click Open, now don't do this. If I went ahead and just clicked, boop, it placed that folder at 100%. But is this what the size of the photo we want to use for the resume? No. So I'll select that and hit Delete. And let me do that again. I'm going to go File, Place. I'll select Cody Headshot, click Open. So, and we should all have that photo in the place gun cursor. So what we can do is we press down, we don't click, but as soon as we start dragging this out, it's going to maintain the proportions. And see how it's telling us this is at 24% now it's at 29, 30%. So it tells us what percentage we're dragging this out as. So maybe I want it at 25% or there's 25%, and then we let go, and there is the photo. Does everyone have that? Okay, so that's one way of doing that. If you're like, okay, I just drag it like that, let's select this and hit Delete. Another way to do it, which is very popular, when people create templates, they said, you know what, like they'll do a magazine template, and every month they're going to have, they'll just swap out, content and put in new content, but use the same templates. And in that case, you'll do a placeholder. So we go right here to the rectangle frame. Let's go ahead and select the rectangle frame tool. We press down, and then we drag out the size that we want to. Now, we don't have to have a rectangle or whatever we want. If we want, let's say we want a square, we hold the Shift key and it'll constrain the proportion, so a perfect square. So let's go ahead and hold the Shift key, and then we let go. So does everyone have this frame right there? So now, like typically what people do is they'll create a frame and they'll fill it with something else, like a gray as a placeholder. So let's actually do that. Let's select it, and so right now it has no fill color, but we'll go right up here, see where it says press fill, click on that, and for now let's just choose black. We'll choose black, and then to close this we click back on that little arrow there, and you see right here where it says opacity, right there, we can go ahead and we can bring that opacity down. So we just make it gray or something if we want to. We could do that. Now another thing we can do, so we could bring the opacity down if we want to, but let's say you don't want it to be transparent. Let's bring that back to 100. Another thing we could do is if we click back on that arrow by where the fill color is, do you see the thing called tint? So if we go ahead and click on that, whoops, we click back here and select tint and click on that arrow right there, we can take this slider and we can drag this down. So this way it's going to be opaque and middle gray, as opposed to if I brought the opacity down, the opacity wouldn't be opaque. You would see through if I put this, like if I put this over something else, it's opaque. But if I actually had this at 100% tint and I brought the opacity down, then you can see through. So let's just bring that tint down to 50% and reposition it. And so this is what most people will do, or a lot of people will do when they're creating. They just want to go ahead and put a placeholder. So now we want to, later on, let's say we want to come back and revisit this. I'm like, oh, there's that photo. We can select that placeholder, and we'll do the same thing. We'll go File. We'll go File, whoops, Place. We'll look for that Cody Headshot, and then we'll go ahead and click Open and watch what happens. So what happened? So what happened is that it placed that content at 100%. So what we need to do, and we could have done this ahead of time, but I wanted you to see what happened like after the fact. So what we could do is click inside. There's a couple of things. If we click on the image right here, we can move that wherever we want to. But you see this little content grabber right here? As soon as I put my hand over it, if I click on that, this shows me the photo in relationship to that frame. So we could move this around inside of here, but this is still not what we're looking for. What do we want to do? I want to shrink that photo down, right? So we right click in that frame, go to fitting. Then there's a bunch of different options that we have, and let me show you. So we should go over those just so you know what they do. If I say fit content to frame, or actually let's go fit frame to content. If we fit frame to content, what do you think is going to happen? Boop! Now that frame takes up the entire photo. That's not what we want to do. Right click on it, go to fitting, and we say fit, and then we say fit content. Well, actually, now we made it. If I go fit content to frame, what happened? Well, we already scaled up the frame, so we got to go, edit, undo. I'm like edit, undo to make it smaller. So go back to where it's small because we already scaled up the frame. So if we right click now, go to fitting, and then we say, you know what, fit content to frame. Watch what happens. We click here, boop, and like, ooh. So what happened here? It distorted it because it took all that content was in a rectangular shape, and this frame is in a square shape. So what it did is it forced that content to fit within inside here, so it distorted it. So this is fine if you're not working with people or things that are noticeable when they get distorted. So let's go edit, undo. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to right click on that, we're going to go to fitting, and then we say, you know what, fill that frame proportionally. So let's see fill frame proportionally. If we select that, notice what happens. So we filled that frame proportionally. So we're getting the bottom cut off and we're getting the top cut off, but the entire frame is fitting inside here. The reason why is there's a difference between the size of the photo and the size of the frame. But if we need it to fit with inside there, then we can just go ahead and click on that content grabber and reposition it inside there. But what happens if we wanted that entire photo to fit with inside that frame? Well, we right click on there, go to fitting, and say fill frame proportionally. Oops. Do that again. Fitting, and go fit that content proportionally. So as soon as we said fit content proportionally, then what happens? The entire content fits proportionally. It doesn't get distorted, but because it's not the same proportions as that, as the frame, it's not going to, you'll see those empty sides. Does that make sense? So what I'm going to do is, and if we didn't have this as gray, it's not going to matter. But let's right click on it, choose fitting, and just say, you know what, fill that frame proportionally. And so now the frame is filled. And if I want to move that photo inside, what would I do? Click on this content grabber, and then I can move this around. Does that make sense? Okay, great. So now we have that. And if I want to move this, just to make sure I don't click on the content grabber, click on the photo, and then when I move this, watch this. Boom, it snaps as soon as it's centered. So what do you think now that we're done with this photo? Actually, you know what? Let's add a drop shadow to this. Give it a little bit of depth. So to add a drop shadow to this, we can go up here to the top. Well, there's a couple things. There's a default one that says drop shadow, but then there's this little effects icon. Do you see that effects icon here, the tool options bar? Do y'all see that? Click on there, and then we go to drop shadow, and we can't see it. I know. So when you were gone, we was like, I put it, we didn't have, this is not a Jane. So there's a drop shadow, but we can't see it. So it says preview. So we go ahead and we will click on preview. So now we can see our drop shadow. And see that angle right there? See that angle? So we can move that angle around, get it the way that we'd like. And the offset, it's like how far that offset is. So the X or the Y. So I'm going to bring this in a little tighter. I'm like, okay. And then we can change the opacity if we want. So maybe I'll bring that opacity down. And we bring that a little bit down. And then we click OK. Does everyone have that? Okay, so now we have that photo. So we did this. So this is not Jane. So if we want to go back and change, that, we go, how would we change it from Jane to Jim? Yeah, exactly. So we go back to our layers panel. We go to layer 1. And where it says Jane Pixel, we unlock that. And we can actually click right here to the right to highlight that. So this little square, now it's highlighted. So I'm going to get our type tool. And his name's Cody, so we'll just highlight this. And we'll just type in CODY. But what problem, let me go ahead and I click right here to my selection tool. What problem do I have right here? I'm having, I can't see that text. And so right down here at the very bottom, this is great when you're working with InDesign. Do you see right here where it says at the very bottom, it says, there's that red thing that says 1 error? Do y'all see that? So when you're working with InDesign, if you run into errors, if you click on it, you'll go ahead and double click on that. Right here, there's this thing called, it says you have 1 text error. I'm like, okay. So if I click on here, I can see that I have overset text. I'm like, okay. So if I click here, it says you have, a text frame, and it tells you what page, bless you, tells you what page that is on. But if you want to know how to fix it, you go right here, it says info, you click here, and it says your problem is that you have overset text of 2 characters. What is the fix? I can resize this text frame or edit the text to fit within the frame. I can also add text frames to the story thread if necessary. I'm like, okay, so what I'm actually going to do is I want to go ahead and grab that frame. I'll go ahead and click on that frame and just expand that frame out a little bit and see if that works. I'm like, okay, great. So just to make, now that I have enough, I want to fit this. So how can I fit this frame to that content? You want to remember? Right click on it, go to fitting. I'm going to fit that frame to the content. Now I'm good. Now I can drag it till it snaps in the middle. I'm like, awesome. So what do you think I'm going to do now? Lock it. So now we've got it locked. Awesome. So the next thing we want to do is we want to do about, contact, all this other stuff. But you know what? I'm going to do all of this at the same time because this is going to be a header, this is going to be a header, this is going to be a subheader. So I want to format these all at the same time. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to go down to the bottom. We're going to create this little page turned up icon, and then we're going to go ahead and create this stroke right here with a that dotted stroke. So let's go right here. And so right here we have this little, we have a little shape right there. We go ahead and we have that, and then we have this shape over it. So what I would like to do is let's get our vertical scroll bar, scroll all the way down. And if I want to zoom in here, let's get our zoom tool, and we just drag that to the right to zoom in. Does everyone have that? Okay, so we want to have that page turned up icon. So the first thing that I want to do is, because I'm just faking it, I want to have a little white I want to have a white triangle right down there on a side. So let's go ahead here, because this is what it's going to look like. Something like that. It'll look like that. So what we want to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to get our pen tool. Actually, you know what? Let's start with this. Let's get the rectangle tool. So we'll get the rectangle tool. We will select that. And right here, this is our fill color. So let's click on our fill color. We'll click on that. And so we can choose, you know, a color from here, you know, if we want to. Or you see these, you know, yeah, so we can choose a color there. But if I want white, you know, if I want white, I could go ahead and type in the value. So 0 red, 0 green, and 0 blue or black. But if I type in, so you have 0 is black, 255 is white, 128 is middle gray. So if I type in 255 red, 255 green, or 255 blue, then I get white. However, if you don't want to deal with that, then you can just change it up here where it says that fill color, and you click here and then just choose paper. So different ways to do the same thing. So I'll click on paper and then I will click to close that. Does everyone have that? Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to drag out a square. So we start to drag out, and if I'm dragging out, if I want a perfect square, I hold the shift key. So now I have this square, but so I let go and I'm off a little bit, so no worries. Let's just get our selection tool, and the reason why I created a guide, not only can I line it up here, but when I move this over, it'll go ahead and it'll snap to there. But oops, see how I'm a little bit off right there? So I can either move it down, or I can just do my down arrow a couple times. So let's go boom. So now that I have that, what do you think I want to do with there? Lock it. I'm going to lock this down because I want to put a little gray shape over there. That'll be the page turned up icon. So let's go ahead to our layers panel, and it says square. So what are we going to do? Lock this. Okay, great. So now that we have that, let's get our pen tool. So our pen tool is the second tool underneath the type tool. So we will select the pen tool. And how the pen tool works is, I'll just click over here. If I click, 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 and then I come back to the beginning, it fills it with whatever that fill color is. So what we want to actually do is we want to fill this with what color? Let me revert this. Let me go ahead. Oops, edit, undo. Let me just boom. We want to fill it with what? Yeah, like that dark gray. So which is you know, it just brought the, you know, that down. So we're going to go ahead and let's get our pen tool. It's the second one down, and then we're going to click in this corner, click in this corner, click in this corner, and then we go back to the very beginning and we click. But what problem do I have right now? I'm going to fill it with gray, right? I'm like, oops. So I go ahead and I go to my fill color. Let's select black. So now I have black, but to make it gray, what do? Change the tint. Let's go ahead and click on the tint and drag that down. And then get it, you know, to what you think is a, you know, you think looks good. So we get it like, I'm like, okay, maybe that's good. And then I let go. Oops. Let me do that again. Beep. Okay, so now I'm good. And so now I have that page turn up icon. What do you think I want to do with this? Bless you. Lock it. Exactly. So I'm going to go to my layers panel, and then I will lock this. And you want to get in the habit of naming these, like I'll tell these page turned up icon. But for right now, I'll just, we're just going to go through this. I'm like, okay, great. So now we have the name, we have the photo, we have that sidebar right here, we have that page turned up icon. Now what we want to do here is we want to go ahead and we want this right here, these little dotted lines right there. So how we do that is I'm going to go ahead and let's go back to our resume really quickly. And so we're going to go ahead and we can get our pin tool. There are a bunch of different ways that we do that. So let's get our pin tool if we want to, and we can click on, we can either do one of two things. We can set a stroke for that pin tool and then select which one we want, or we can go to the one right above it, the line tool. So we can do both. So for this one, let's do the line tool. I don't want to fill, I want a stroke color, so let's click right here where it says fill, and then you see where it says none? We want to click here for none, and then click to close that, and then for fill, we're going to click on that arrow, and then we're going to select black, and then let's try a 2-point, we'll try a 2-point stroke. Then we could have a solid stroke, but if we click here, we have a bunch of different options. I'm going to choose Japanese dots. Then what we want to do, if we look here, this one starts, kind of up to the top of the first name. So okay, we'll start right here, and so we can press down and we start to drag it. But if I'm dragging it at an angle, if you hold the Shift key down, the Shift key will go ahead and constrain it to a straight line, like straight vertical. Does that make sense? Then we let go of that, and so now we have that dotted line. Does everyone have that? Okay, great. So let's go ahead and what are we going to do to that stroke? Let's lock it. So we go to layer 1 and we lock that line layer. Okay, so now what we have is if we go back and we view this, we need to add, about, like this header. This is going to be body copy. We have, subheaders right there. So let's actually work from here, and then we'll come in and clean this up in a little bit. So there's a header here that says experience. There's these subheaders, and then there's body copy. So let's go ahead and for our resume, let's get our type tool. Let's get our type tool, and then we'll press down, and what we're going to do is we're dragging out a text frame. So this text frame is where we want our text to sit. So we're going to drag this all the way down. I'll drag it to the bottom, and this is kind of cool. It snaps when it gets to the bottom of that stroke, so it knows that it's lined up with it. Cool. And I'll let go. So now we don't have any type in there. So what we could do, we can either start typing, choose a type, and all this others. But if we already have it, why waste our time? And when I say that we already have it, if I go, you can just watch this. I'm going to my links folder. I go into the text, and then there's, if I go into resume text, I open this up, we see that we already have, our headers, our subheaders, and our body copy. So everything was already typed for us in Word. Let me see if this one also has the, same. It's the same. These are the same exact ones. So what I want you to do from here in InDesign, let's go to the File menu. We'll go to Place, and we're going to navigate, from our Place thing. I'm actually going to go up to my Links folder. So back to my Links one. And do you all see the folder that says Text? You see that one? Okay. So let's just select resume text doc. Before you do that, let's select show import options. So make sure that you select show import options. Go ahead and click open. And so what this will do, when you have that selected, you can say, you know what? Preserve any styles and formatting from text and tables. So if you already have, styles, associated with that in Word, you can bring these in. So I'm going to say, so we could do this right now, or we can just say remove styles, and normally it'll just bring it over like that. But I'm going to remove any styles and formatting, and then we'll go ahead and click OK. And so now it places all of that content without any formatting. The reason why I like to strip out the formatting that comes over from Word is that InDesign has more precision available to me. If you're just going to be doing 1 or 2 pages, then feel free to bring the formatting over from Microsoft Word, and then you don't have to do any more work. But if I really want a lot of control, I'm going to be doing multiple pages, then what I would do is I start creating styles. So all of these text, everything is, in this case, Minion Pro regular at 12. Doesn't matter what. So now I want to start defining styles. So I don't have to do this again and again and again. I only do this once. So let's highlight here where it says experience. Does everyone have that highlighted? And then I'm going to choose, I'll choose something, it doesn't matter. I'm going to choose Helvetica, oops, I need to spell it right. Helvetica Bold. Now, if you don't have that, don't worry about it. You can just choose like Impact Bold, or some Arial Bold, so Arial Bold or Impact Bold, or any type of bold that you want. So I want it a little larger, so I'm going to change it from 12 points. Let me try to see what 14 points looks like. Okay, 14 points looks good. On this one, it's set to Helvetica Bold 18. So I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe let's go with 18. So I'll go 18 points. So we got Helvetica Bold at 18 points. Now, so I'm like, okay, I like that. But if I wanted to change, right now it's set to black, so we could change it to a different color, but I'm just going to keep it simple. So with this highlighted right there, let us go ahead and we want to go, let's go to the excuse me, let's go to the type menu since we're dealing with type, and we want to go ahead and create a character style. So let's go ahead and create a character style. And what we're going to say, so a character style is going to allow us to apply settings. Like we'll say this is a character style, and any time we define a style, we can apply this style to it. So what we want to do is we want to create a brand new one. So you see right down here it says create a new style. Did y'all see that? Let's click on there, and it says character style 1. Character style 1 means nothing to us. I'm like, okay, what is character style 1? So if this is a header, what should we call character style 1? Header. So we'll double click where it says character style. It pops open the character style options, and let's call this header. And this tells us that the style is, it's always going to be Helvetica Bold at 18. But then I can, so this is, I can apply this. But then I'm like, what, let's look at basic character formats. So this is where we can apply like underlines. We could say, you know what? Check this out. See where it says experience? Let's say you wanted every header, no matter what I typed in, it's always going to be, all caps. So we'll type in all caps, and then check this out. If I click preview, see how it updated that? I'm like, okay, so every header is going to be Helvetica Bold 18 with all caps. I can also choose, different scaling options. But let's go to character color. What color do you want this heading to be? Is black okay, or do you want a different color? The what color?
I don't know if the blue.
Sure. Works. It's just for just to learn. So yeah, this is good. Perfect. So we'll go with like the cyan and stuff. And so I'm like, okay, so cyan. And then we have a bunch of different ones, but right now I'll just keep it there. And so just to go back to general, we can see that now every time we say this is a header, it's going to be Helvetica bold at 18 using cyan with all caps. So then we click OK. And then if I go to somewhere else, like let's say I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, I got experience. Oh, then there's education. So that education is going to be, so all we have to do is we highlight education and we open up our character styles. And which one do we want to apply to it? Header. Boom. So I click on it. And then if I like go ahead here and get my selection tool and I click off of it, now it is applied to it. So I only had to create that style once. And if I have a, if like right now we're just doing a resume, so we're doing one page, but you might have a couple of pages. And so how easy is it going to be to just highlight something and boom, header, 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 and everything has that. So you don't have to keep changing type, changing size, changing color, I want this all caps. It makes it very, very easy for you. But here's the great thing. Let's say that you decided that maybe cyan didn't work. Well, check this out. We can, oops, I had everything selected, so make sure that beep, I click off of that. So if I go back to header and I double click on header, watch this, beep, double click on there. And so when I go to character color, let's say I wanted to go with black instead, I click on that, see how it says preview? Boom. Or if I said, magenta, it updates. So I can have hundreds of pages from this document. I mean, you're not going to have a resume that's 100 pages, but if you had a document that had a bunch of different pages, changing this is going to be so easy. Okay, so now we have our header. The next thing we want to do is create a subheader one. So let's get our type tool and we highlight where it says job title, company, state, and county. So the first one, I set to Helvetica bold. The next one, I did another, or they did another bold. I usually like to keep these like similar, but let's just play around with this. So I'm just say, what? Oh, and incidentally, when you're doing a resume, you don't want to have a lot of different typefaces. Keep it around like 2, 3 maybe, but the more typefaces you use, the more unprofessional it looks. So it's all about keeping it simple. So I'll have one for a header, and then you can decide, do you want a subheader that's going to be a smaller version of the header or a bold version of the body. So in this one, I'm going to keep it at this. This one was Helvetica bold at 18 points. This one I'm going to say I want this to be Helvetica. I need to spell it right. Helvetica. I'll say, what? I'll say, let's try Helvetica regular. So I'm like, okay, so Helvetica bold and Helvetica regular. So, and then Helvetica regular. And let's go ahead and create a new character style. So we go to the character styles panel, and if you don't see the character styles panel, you go to the type menu. You go to character styles. So type character styles. None is applied, so I'm going to actually go down and click create a new style. Character style 1 means nothing, so what should we call the subheader style? Subheader. So I'll double click on that and call this subheader. And this is just going to be, Helvetica. But I can also say, oh, you know what? there's Helvetica, but let me have it set to 12. So anytime, so this is where you could say, okay, I can decide to have it at a particular font, but I can say, okay, you know what? In addition to Helvetica, anytime something's it's going to be Helvetica 12, and I'll just keep it like that. And we could see other options, but do you want to keep it black, or do you want to do you want a different color? What color do you want? Keep it black or something else? Black. Okay. So let's select black, and then we'll go ahead and click OK. And so now if I get my selection tool and click off of that, so now I've got my header, I have my subheader, and let's just go through the subheaders really quickly, and we'll add subheaders, and then we're going to do the body copy. So we get our type tool, we're going to highlight, let me see, so right here there's internship, company, blah blah blah. So we go right here, it says internship, we highlight that, and what style do I apply to this? Exactly, subheader. I go to the next one right here, highlight that, I click what? Subheader, go down here, highlight it, and then we click subheader. Okay, great. That's cool. We have how we like it. So that's how we so what characters do, characters allow us to change either a letter, a word, or some words. So I can actually go ahead to here and say, okay, let me go ahead here, and I selected that dollar, and I click subheader, and it changes it to a subheader. If I click here to header, see how it changes that, but that's not what I want. So let me undo that. Okay, so now we have the characters, but what happens if we want, a paragraph? So if I go ahead here and I say, okay, you know what? Let me highlight this paragraph right here. And this is not going to be a character. I'm going to have it applied to an entire character. So let's click on to paragraph, and let's go ahead and change this. So right now it is set to, I've got this set to Minion Pro. I'll go ahead, I had the other one set to Helvetica, and actually I'll keep this. Let me change this to, let's see what Times New Roman looks like. I'll do Times New Roman Regular. Times New Roman Regular, and that looks good. And so what I want to do now, see right here at the bottom of paragraph style, it says create new style. Let's click on create new style. It says paragraph style 1. Like, does that make sense? So I'll just double click on this, and I'll just call this body copy. So that's like the body copy. So it's going, so I'm going to say, okay, what are our basic character formats? It's Times New Roman at 12, and you can have all of these different, I can do indents and spacing. So if I go over here and move this and click on preview, let's do a left indent. So let's click on this. So I can do a left indent if I want to, or let me set that back to 0, or do a first line indent. So let's do a first line indent. I'm like, okay, we have a first line indent. And then I can do, like I said, I can have all of these different, options. I'm just going to keep it very, very, very simple right now. And then I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So then I get my type tool and click off of it. So now we've got our header, our subheader, and our paragraph style. That defines, a paragraph. If I wanted to select a word or two and apply a paragraph style to it, it's going to apply it to the entire paragraph. So let me show you what I mean. Let's get the type tool, and let's click on somewhere inside the next paragraph. Doesn't matter. I'm just clicking on it. I'm not selecting the entire paragraph. But if I want to apply that body copy to it, let's click on body copy. Boop. And the entire paragraph got changed. So the difference between a character style and a paragraph style is that a paragraph style, it doesn't matter where I click in the paragraph, it applies it to the entire paragraph. A character style I can apply to a letter, a word, a set of words, or a bunch, but a bunch of words. So then I click right here to the next, with my type tool, click on the next paragraph. Like I said, I don't have to highlight the entire paragraph. Just click somewhere, then I click body copy, click the next one, and I click body copy. Does that make sense? Okay, great. And so like I said, we can, some of these need to be moved around a little bit, like the spacing between these. So we can go ahead and, clean these up if we want to, just depending on what we want to do. So for right now, we'll keep that the way that is. Now, the next thing we want to do that we have this is we're looking over here. We have the about. So the about is Helvetica bolded 18. This was Helvetica, 24. So I'm like, okay, so the main thing that we're concerned about is the name here, but all these are going to be, smaller, So if I'm going to go ahead here, and we'll get our type tool, and I'm going to, how do I drag out a text frame? Exactly. Press it, drag it out. And so this one, I'll start typing in, and mine's Helvetica bolded 18. You can choose whatever you want to. And so for here, we're going to type in about. So I'll type in about. And why can't I see my type? When I selected the type up in the right hand corner, it shows me, as well as down here, it shows me that the type that I'm typing with is cyan. So if I go ahead here and I type in like, oh yeah, ABOUT, I'm like, what's going on? But if I highlight that here, I'm like, oh, there we go. And I click on there. I'm going to select this to black. So now I can see it, and I can click off of that. And I'm like, okay, so let me get rid of that first line. So there's about. And if I want to change that frame to match I want this frame to fit to the text, what would I do? Right click on it, fitting, and then fit that text frame to the content. Boop. So this one over here, these are all aligned left. So if I wanted to align this left, watch this. If we take about and I drag this to the left, watch what happens. Boom. See how it snaps right there? And so if we want to do the same thing with that photo, we can click here. Whoops. This is locked, so I'll unlock that later. So we have about. And so now we want to go ahead and we want to put some about content. So we'll get the type tool, we'll click down, and we start dragging out, copy that we want to put for there. But for this copy, I've got it set till.
Is the type of tool what you use to create the big box with the experience and education on it?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, same thing, we just dragged that out. Yeah. So yeah, please feel free to ask questions. That's what I'm here for. So yeah, so we went ahead and I just got that type tool, I pressed down and I dragged out this type frame, this text frame, and as soon as I get it the way that I want, and this is kind of cool, watch, as I'm dragging it to the right, see how it snaps like to the top frame where it says pixel, Cody pixel, and so so now I've got it same, I have a equal distance from the left and equal distance from the right. I let go, and so this one was set to something else like PT sans bold, and you know what, I'll just use whatever I used for this subheader. For that subheader I did Helvetica regular, so I'm like, okay, so I want to say Helvetica regular at, what was that, at 12. So Helvetica regular at 12 points. So I don't have like the about text right now, and if you don't have it as well, then what you do is you use placeholder text. So we'll go ahead here, and because we're working with type, we can go to the type menu, and then we say fill with placeholder text. So we can fill that with placeholder text. And so what is the problem that I have? I filled it with placeholder text, but I got to make sure that I use the right color. In this case, I already had cyan, so I just have to highlight that. Had I just selected black ahead of time, I wouldn't have had to worry about that. Beep. And then I can just get my selection tool and click off of it. Does that make sense? Okay, so now I think, you know what, I have way too much for about, and this is kind of probably overkill for about, so maybe I made that frame a bit too large. So I can just highlight it, whatever I don't want, and I hit delete. But I have all this additional space right there. What do you think, what should I do? Because I want to put other stuff here. Way too much. So I could do one of two things. I can get my selection tool and I can come down here and I can grab it and I can start resizing that. Or, you know, if I want it really to snap to the content, right click within the text frame, go to fitting, and then fit that frame to content. Beep. So I have that. But this, you know, was going to be, let me highlight this. This was Helvetica regular at 12. Let me just see something. Helvetica regular. Oh, actually, you know what? So, yeah, this was Helvetica regular 12. This, yes?
How do you get multiple text boxes to snap to the same kind of like alignment?
I'm sorry, the what?
Like if you wanted to add another text box like after about, like let's say, I don't know, contact education policy, I don't know. How would you get the text boxes to be in perfect alignment?
Excellent question. Okay, so first let me fix some stuff that I did here, and then so with this one, I'm like, whoa, I selected, you know, this, and I'm like, okay, you know what? I have all this, but why is it all capitals? Because see right here, mine says like, you know, I have like all caps. So if I click off of that, I'm like, oh, that's where my problem was. I had all caps, you know, selected. So my issue was, you know, right here it says all caps. So I just uncheck that. So now I might have to right click on there, go to fitting, and then fit frame to the content. So boop. So now I'm good. And then I can move this up, and then everything, you know, snaps in place. I'm like, okay, great. I have that. Just like I said, make sure that it's there. Like I said, if I move that off, I'm like, oh, I need to get it back. No worries. I just drag it over there, and it goes ahead, beep, and snap to there. Okay. So if I want to make another text box and stuff, you know, directly, so you can do a couple of different things. If I go ahead and I get my type tool right there, and I start to drag out, and I can, if I'm moving things around, watch this. Like I'm holding my space bar down, and while I'm dragging out, and see how I get it, it snaps to like when it's alignment with the other ones. So I can snap there, or you know what you can do is, I'm a big fan of this, is I always use guides, and like most designers will use guides. I'm going to go ahead here and get a vertical guide. I press down and I want to not grab that. So I'm going to grab a vertical guide, grab it and drag it, and it's going to snap to the edge of that one. And then I get another one, grab it and drag it, and it'll snap to this one. And so now I can see these. I'd probably want to change the coloring of those guides because it's hard to see over cyan. So then I just go ahead and I get the type tool, and I go ahead and I press down, and so it snaps to that guide, and then I snap to that guide, and then I'm good to go. So that's one way. Another way to do it is if you want now there's going to be different text in there, so the frames, you know, we can have them the same size on the sides, but because there's going to be different text is, it's going to, one might be shorter, one might be longer. But if you want it, to just piggyback off of the work that you already done, you select this, and then you go ahead. On Windows, you would hold Option or Alt. On Mac, you'd hold Option, and see how it gets those double arrows? If I press down, that means it's going to copy it. So as soon as I press and I start dragging it, it copies it, but I'm all over the place. But if I hold the Shift key as I'm dragging it down, it'll make sure that it stays perfectly straight. So I like to,
Alt Control to copy, and then after that you can switch to Shift key and drag it.
yeah. So yeah, I'll do that one more time because I do this all the time. Like steal like frames from it. So I go ahead and select it, and it brings the formatting over with it, so it makes it pretty cool. So I'll select that. I hold the Option on the Mac, Alt on Windows, and then I start dragging it. And as I'm dragging it, I'm like, oops, I'm all off over the place. Now I've got the guide, so it'll kind of snap there. But if I just hold the Shift key, then it will go ahead and stay in that straight line. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You're welcome. Okay, so this one, do I have any styles applied to this one? It's like, if I can do that, and I just apply those styles, to it. And if I'm going to go ahead, let me click on About use like a header style, or actually just not really. Yeah, just so then we can, and the same thing with About. So if I'm like looking here, I'm like, okay, I've got About, Contact. I can go ahead and I can even steal that one. So if I click on About, and I just, how do I copy that? Option or Alt, press down, start dragging it, and then I hold the Shift key, and then I let go, and so now it brought everything over, and it still has that same formatting. So then I can just go ahead, and this would be, I can highlight this, and I start typing in Contact. But what's the problem here? What's going on here?
It's fitting.
Exactly, the fitting is wrong, and you can see right down here it says one error. So we're almost done, about 3 more minutes, and so so if I click onto right here, double click, it says, hey, you have a text error. It's overset text, and it is on page 1. This is really helpful if I have lots of pages. It says what, and I said, what is that? And I click on info, it says you have overset text by 4 characters. What is the fix? To resize this text frame or edit the text to fit within the frame, so I can make the text smaller, or I can add text frames to the story thread if necessary. So what I'll do is I'll just, I can just say grab this and drag this. I'm like, see how more? I'm like, oh, okay, great. So now I've got Contact exactly the way that I, like everything fits, but this is like too big for me. So how can I fit this? Right click on that text frame, go to where? Fitting, fit frame to content, and now everything is there. And if I want to change anything at any time, let me just do one. I'll just end with this one really quickly. And then if you look at the one that's in that file, you can kind of like borrow from what they have. Like these are just lines right there. They put a line, they colored it, with the stroke, and these are individual elements. Like we did a stroke with the Japanese dots, you can just do it with a solid line. So all these are strokes and text. And so if I wanted to change this really quickly, and I wanted to make this in a circle, I'm just go back to layers. I'll click here, and for right there it says Cody. Let me just turn that. Let me go ahead and turn off that headshot. So it's still there. I just hit it, but I actually want to see what it would look like with a rectangular frame. So let's go ahead and do the ellipse frame tool. I'll go ahead and I'll drag that out. And if I want a perfect circle, what modifier key do I hold? Exactly, Shift will be a perfect circle. And then I let go. And then if I wanted this perfectly centered, I just get my selection tool, position it, and boop, it snaps when it's perfectly centered.
For the circle, it's literally just hold Shift and open up. Or after you've already clicked on the circle tool. Okay.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, so what I did is I did the ellipse frame tool, and then I click and I start to drag it, and I'm like, you know what? As I'm dragging it, I decide I want to go ahead and have a perfect circle or a perfect square. I hold the Shift key, and then it goes ahead and gives me that perfect circle, and then I just get my selection tool. Then I drag it till it snaps right here. I'm like, boop. So now it's centered. I'm like, perfect. So, does anyone remember how I can place that photo in there? File, place. I navigate to my links folder, and you want to put all of your media inside there, your photos, your text. And so I'm going to select that photo of Cody. I select that Photoshop document. Go ahead and click open. And it's got Photoshop layers, and I'm going to go, so this is good. I click OK. And so what is the problem that we have here? Thought it was too big. So if I clicked right onto the center, that's called the content grabber. I can see the frame of the photo. Like, whoa, that photo is way bigger than that circle. I mean, I can move that photo inside here, but that looks kind of weird. So what I'm going to do instead is right-click into that frame. So we select it, right-click onto there, and do what? Fitting. Now with the circle one, I say, you know what? Let's go ahead and fit that content proportionally. But what happened? It fit that content proportionally, but where we see the entire content fits within inside that frame, but it's not what I want. So let me edit and undo that. So instead, we right-click, go to fitting. We want to fill that frame, the entire frame, proportionally. We don't want to distort the image. If we fit the content to the frame, it would distort the image. So we want to fill that entire frame proportionally. Boop. And so now we can see the photo is cropped, but it fits that entire content. And if I want to move it around, I click on the middle of that content grabber, and I can click that and move it there. And then if I want to deselect it, I just get my selection tool and click in the gray area. Does that make sense? Now, how did I add a drop shadow like I did before? Exactly. Go to the effects icon. We select drop shadow, and go ahead and we choose drop shadow, and we go ahead, get it the way that we want to, and oops, what? Let me go back here. Oh, you know why? You actually have to, don't forget to click onto the image itself. So you got to click on the image itself. Then when I go back to effects, go to drop shadow, make sure that preview is selected. It's not on by default. Click preview, and then I can change the angle of that drop shadow. Like, get it the way that you want. And then I can choose like the offset, like if I want to, the Y offset, how far. I'll just keep it. And then I think this is good. I don't want to do too much. And then if I want to, change like the spread of that and stuff, or blur it, let's go ahead and click OK. And then I'm done. And so this is just, a quick, well, we had an hour and a half, but this is just, an easy way to go ahead and create a resume with a little bit of, color inside of it. But one of the important things is working with styles. Instead of you having to go type, because I'll see people doing this a lot, they'll just type something out here, they'll do all caps, then they'll type this in a different, and then they'll type this or paste it from somewhere else and have to do all the formatting, and time again, like each one of these are doing formatting again and again and again. When you just create a character style for your headers and your subheaders, and you create a what style for the body copy? Paragraph style. And those are found under your type menu. You have your character styles and your paragraph styles. And so when you're working with your type tool, you can see it right over here. To the left, there's character formatting options, like you have what typeface you're using, the formatting for it. Is it, all caps or not? What other settings you have. If you click here to paragraph, this is where you can say, okay, how do you want the alignment? Do you want drop caps? Do you want indents? Do you want shading on this? So your paragraph options and your character options. Cool. So any questions about this? Yes?
For the blue bar on the left, it looks like that was an image that was kind of inserted and fit to the, like, how was that?
Oh yeah, so for this one right here, this was, this is why it's helpful to name your layers because, there we go, side panel. So now, so I'm just going to turn that visibility off. For that one, what I did is went ahead and got the rectangle tool. So I select the rectangle tool and then made sure that I didn't have a stroke. So I clicked none for stroke. And then for the fill color, clicked here. And then I just went ahead and selected cyan. And then I dragged it, drag this. And I set these guides so it would snap like 3 inches from the side. And then just drag that down and get it to where I want to. And then I just went right here. But it's covering everything. So, oops, and I actually need to turn off that drop shadow. So it's covering everything because it created it at the top of the stacking order. So that's why I start at the very beginning when I created this. But if I did it after the fact, I could just grab this and drag this down to the very bottom. And then when I let go, boop. So now it's cool.
And then, but the little flip at the bottom, how it looks like a page is closed.
Oh yeah, so for that one, what I did is,
Are those just 2 triangles that you kind of put over it?
Yeah, what I did is I actually, for this one, I locked this. I got click off everything, make sure nothing's selected. Then I got I made sure to lock these so I don't accidentally, paste into that same one. So then I pasted it with white when I hit paper white. And then I got I have to zoom in a little bit so I can see what I was working with. And this is why I usually like to go ahead and put guides, so it'll go ahead and snap. So now I have a guide here and guide there. Then I get my rectangle tool, make sure that I have white, and I can just go in the bottom corner and with the guides, and so now it snaps to both those guides. And if I hold, what modifier key do I hold to make it perfect square? Exactly, hold the shift key and then beep, and then oops, I accidentally have drop shadow selected, so I just click off. And so now with that rectangle, that one that I just created, or that square, I just lock that, and I'm faking, I'm faking like blank, I'm faking the canvas there. So then I went ahead and got the pin tool. I select the pin tool, and somehow my drop shadow's on, so let me turn that default one off. So I want a black fill, so I'm going to click here. I'm going to choose black fill. But instead of being 100% black, I want a dark gray. So I bring that tint down, and I can see right here what it's going to look like. So I bring that down maybe like, 75% or something. So no stroke. And then I click in one of those corners, click to go straight across, click to go to this corner, boop, and then I click to close it, boop. And so now, once I have that, I just lock that down, and so now I have that page turned up icon. Let me turn these off really quickly. Let me turn off all those locks. Okay, so let me turn that off really quickly. Okay, good. So you see how I did that? Cool. So any questions about this? So this is just, like I said, an introduction to working with InDesign to create a resume. That InDesign file, the Adobe InDesign file, is in your resources one. So it has like the template that you could work with. You know how to change the color. We worked with character styles, paragraph styles, and then these ones right down here. Same thing that we did with the creating that stroke. It's the same thing here, but instead there's this solid line and stuff. So you have a solid line, and then the same thing, we just added exactly what we did here. They actually just put 2 together and one is black, and the other has that tint. See, there's that tint there, and this is set to black, and this, they actually just changed it. They did an RGB value. We do the same thing with the tint. Does that make sense? Cool. So any questions before we close up? Cool. Was this helpful?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So like I said, in the...
Oh, I have one question.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that on InDesign with the skill bar that you created that within InDesign, like with the rectangle and stuff like that.
Correct.
If you wanted to import some icons from Illustrator, would you, is it kind of like the same way you imported the photo?
Absolutely. It's the same exact, and in my InDesign class, we'll bring in Illustrator files or bring in Photoshop, like layered Photoshop files. Same thing you would do like with photo, you go File, and then you go ahead and, File, Place, and then when you place, then you navigate. I'm not on my computer, or else I could navigate to my Illustrator. I'm on their computer. But then I would navigate to, let's say this was the Illustrator file, and then you would go ahead, and if you open that or place that, then it'll place that Illustrator file in there. It'll open up, and then it'll actually do this. It'll open up. Oops, let me do that again. Go File, Place. I would select, let's say this is the Illustrator file. I click Open, and am I in that? That's weird. Let me click on this one. Let's try that one more time. Go File, Place. Select that. Oh, I don't want to. And then click Open. And then the multi-place gun cursor opens, and this would be your Illustrator file. And then if you clicked on it, it opens it up at 100%. But that's, might not be what you want to do. So instead, what you would do is you'd press down and you'd start dragging out that Illustrator file to get it exactly the size that you want to. And it tells you, in this case, this photo is 33%. Now it's 40%. You just get it the way that you want, and you can let go. Unless you want it, let's say there's an area, like let's say you want it like right in here, your Illustrator file to go right in there, then you make sure that that frame that you want to place it in is, select it, then you go File, File, Place, and then you do the same thing. And then it'll place it then. So I can either file place the original file and then drag out, and it'll create the frame, and you'll have the object, or you can create the frame ahead of time. And usually, while you create the frame ahead of time, is if you're doing a template and you have to have things a specific, in specific, sizes and shapes. But if you're just, like, I just want to figure it out, I just want to eye it, then just File, Place, select the Illustrator file and place it. Does that make sense? Cool. Yeah, and so also in there, one of the things I was showing in the Illustrator files is there are resources right here. There's resources about, placing files of what we did. Then there's also these, 8 things that you should know, and it goes through a resume. And then there are different tutorials and links. Now the InDesign tutorials, the one that we went over right now, this was actually, that file came from the Adobe's one, how to create a professional resume. And there's also a video, how to snazz up your resume. So pretty much everything that we did here was off the Adobe site.
Perfect.
Cool. Was this helpful? Awesome.
The